In a crude mountain hut above the Arctic Circle, a man stares at his own feet, darkened by frostbite. No battlefield around him, no cheering crowd, just silence and a pocket knife. His name is Jan Baalsrud. Right now, he's being hunted across Norway, and in the weeks ahead, the hunt will only tighten. Baalsrud didn't survive because he was superhuman. He survived because an entire region decided he wouldn't die alone.
To understand how he ended up in that hut, we have to go back.
By 1943, Norway had been under Nazi occupation for years. Jan Baalsrud was a Norwegian resistance commando trained for covert operations as part of Company Lynch. His mission was called Operation Martin, a plan to organize resistance work in the north and support sabotage planning tied to German operations around Bardufoss. It was dangerous from the start, but the real danger wasn't the mission itself. It was what went wrong before the mission could even take shape.
The team entered northern Norway by sea, disguised as fishermen. They needed one thing to succeed: trust. But in the confusion, they approached the wrong person, a local shopkeeper with the same name as their intended contact. The shopkeeper panicked. Whether out of fear or suspicion, he alerted authorities, and soon the Germans were closing in. Just like that, the operation was compromised. The ambush came fast. A German patrol intercepted their boat in the fjords. The commandos tried to destroy sensitive equipment and escape. Gunfire ripped through the chaos. In freezing water and smoke, most of the team was killed or captured. Baalsrud, soaked in icy seawater, managed to reach shore. Injured, exhausted, and alone, he vanished into the snow. Now he had one job: move or die.
That same night, Baalsrud stumbled into civilians who could have turned him in. Instead, they pulled him inside. They fed him, dried his clothes, gave him a chance to breathe, just long enough to keep going. In occupied Norway, helping him wasn't just kindness, it was treason. Prison, torture, even execution were real possibilities. And they helped him anyway.
Baalsrud traveled mostly at night, hiding by day. He relied on people who barely knew his name, yet still risked everything to shelter him. He pushed into Arctic terrain that punished every mistake. Then it happened. An avalanche. It smashed his equipment, erased his tracks, and left him with even less food and even less strength. He wasn't only being hunted, he was being worn down by the cold itself.
Days later, Baalsrud reached a farmhouse connected to the resistance. He was barely functioning, more exhaustion than man. The danger was immediate. German forces were nearby. One noise, one wrong moment, one slip of luck, and everyone inside that house could be condemned. But they hid him anyway. This story wasn't just about one commando anymore. It was becoming a chain of courage, link after link, each person gambling their life to keep the chain unbroken.
On April 12th, Baalsrud was moved again, hidden in a remote hut. Later, he gave it a bitter, almost joking name, Hotel Savoy. But inside that hut, the war turned inward. Frostbite had already done its damage, and Baalsrud feared the next stage, gangrene. So he took a pocket knife and amputated his own toes to stop the infection from spreading. Not for glory, not for legend, for one reason only: to stay alive long enough to keep moving. Later, resistance helpers tried to transfer him toward a safer route, but plans in the Arctic don't bend easily. Weather closed in, patrols shifted, timing collapsed, and the pickup never came. They hid Baalsrud beneath rock and snow, building what shelter they could.
then left him there while searching for a way forward. A coded message went out. The fish yarn is completed and ready to be picked up. Harmless words on paper, but the meaning was deadly serious. A man was dying in the mountains, and anyone helping him could die too.
Baalsrud was moved again, hidden in a cave, surviving with almost nothing. He endured days that felt endless. His body weakened, his injuries worsened, and still the hunt continued. At points, he was forced to amputate more of his frostbitten toes just to stay ahead of infection and collapse. In total, he evaded capture for about 2 months, remembered as 63 days in occupied Norway. The mission had failed, but the survival became its own act of resistance.
In the final stretch, rescue didn't look like an army. It looked like ordinary people, including Sami helpers who knew this land better than anyone. They carried Baalsrud on a sled, pulled by reindeer across snow and open ground, pushing toward neutral territory and medical care. When he reached a hospital, doctors asked a simple question: who amputated his toes? Baalsrud's answer stunned them. He did.
Safe at last, Baalsrud learned what had happened to others from the operation. Many were captured, many were tortured and executed. After the war, Baalsrud was recognized for his service, but he refused to call himself the hero of this story. He insisted the heroes were the people who sheltered him, fed him, moved him, and protected him, even when it could cost them everything. Because some legends aren't built by one person's strength, they're built when a community decides that in the darkest winter, no one gets left behind.